Today's episode of Socially Democratic is presented to you by Dunn Street. Dunn Street is a progressive campaign agency that specialises in campaigning and community organising. We work with non-profit and community-based organisations, trade unions, progressive businesses and social democratic parties across the globe. Dunn Street develops community engagement and organising strategies to win campaigns both big and small, and we train engagement staff, organisers and volunteers in leadership and power building. And we also help leaders craft their own public narrative that tells a story that can unite people and move them to act together. And if you want to unite people within your community, then hit us up at dunstreet.com.au. Today's episode is also brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. When you need support with a legal issue, it can feel pretty daunting. And that's why for over 100 years, Maurice Blackburn has been helping and guiding clients with their legal needs. They're here to help you when you need them the most, from workplace to medical injuries, class actions, occupational diseases, and wills and estates planning. As Australia's leading plaintiff law firm, they have the local knowledge and the national network with experience that you can count on. And to find out more, just go to their website, which is mauriceblackburn.com.au. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by SwiftFox. Every moment on a campaign matters. You need the tools that you can trust, lists that are up to date, phone banks that can change minds, emails that drive donations, events that will energize the community both online and offline, and text blasts that still your message perfectly. SwiftFox CRM is made for campaigners by campaigners. And to find out more, go to their website, which is swiftfoxcrm.com to win your next campaign. Hello and welcome to another episode of Socially Democratic, your weekly centre-left politics and organising podcast that drops every Friday, that dives into the progressive campaigns and the issues of the day and the people leading them from home and abroad. And abroad, we go once more over to the United States, to New York, to Staten Island, in fact, where we are going to examine an industrial campaign that truly is a David versus Goliath victory. As Marshall Gantz famously said in one of his books, sometimes David wins. Well, this story is one of those occasions when David does win. And of course, we are talking about when a group of workers took on the multinational warehousing distribution giant, and they're more than that because they're TV, their pictures, they're everything. They are Amazon. Chris Smalls was working at Amazon at their Staten Island warehouse facility throughout COVID, and he took on that company, was subsequently fired, and then organised from within to organise the facility in Staten Island to turn that workplace from a non-union workplace to a union workplace, and then subsequently set up his own union called the Amazon Labour Union. Chris is on the show today to talk about that story. This is huge. If any of us that aren't involved in labour union politics may not have heard about this story, but certainly if you have been, you will know about this because he was an overnight global sensation. And it's wonderful to have Chris take time out of his incredibly busy schedule to come on the show today to share his story and the story of those workers at that Amazon facility. So looking forward to today's special episode with Chris Mills from the Amazon Labour Union. But before we do that, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Stitcher. And if you like the show, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast and on Spotify when you're done listening to today's episode, or even better, leave us a review on Apple Podcast or on Podchaser. And for all updates, please follow Dunn Street on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Okay, let's get to today's episode. We're taping this one on a Thursday morning on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and joining me on the line from the United States, and I'm assuming he's in New York City, is the Amazon Labour Union founder, leader, and grassroots community organiser. And it's great to have him on the show today. I'm very pleased about this. Chris Smalls, welcome to Socially Democratic.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we jump into the contemporary campaign that you led in the Amazon warehouse in Staten Island, I actually am really keen to learn a bit more about your own backstory. and sort of the moments that sort of defined who you were and what values were important to you. Where did you grow up, and what did you aspire to be as a young person?
Yeah, so I'm actually from New Jersey, where I currently reside. Born and raised, um, a single parent home. My mom, single mother, single black mother, raising two boys. I'm the oldest, and as a kid, I was very much a people's person. Still, always outgoing, adventurous, and I had a really big passion in music and sports. So I played a lot of basketball growing up. That was my favorite sport. Inspiring to be a NBA basketball player. Of course, my second passion was music, so I wanted to be a musician, a rapper, or a hip hop artist as well. Growing up as a kid, and in my teenage years, that's when I really started to, and indulge into sports and music. And I did a lot of talent shows. I played sports from my perspective, high school, and I was on varsity and things like that for sports. So I was very athletic, very much a community people's person, and yeah, my passion was music. So I loved to make songs, and I was starting to have a really good buzz before I became an essential worker at a very young age. It was my first job being Target, actually.
Um, you've picked an interested one as well, which is US sports. So I'm going to have to ask you some questions about sports before we dive into the main part. NBA basketball. I'm a massive Celtics fan. I'm absolutely devastated that my team got knocked out in the Eastern Conference Finals in
Yeah.
Game 7, and I'm still recovering, so I don't want to talk too much about that. But in terms of your aspiring NBA career, how far did you progress before you didn't reach the big lights of the NBA?
Well, I actually went to college. I tried to walk on with the Florida Atlantic University that I attended at the time, but I had a reoccurring injury. Once again, becoming an essential worker at 16, I messed up. I messed that up by working, and one day on the job, I was hit by a vehicle in the parking lot,
Oh,
and
Jesus.
it tore my ligaments in my ankle, which pretty much ended my NBA career before I even got started. Um,
That must have been
yeah,
devastating.
yeah. And I tried to come back. I had some progress coming back, but it was never going to be 100%. And I just kept re-injuring it. So I didn't want to get any surgery, screws at that, especially at that age. So I just pretty much took a back seat to sports. And then I started to, major in my music, which I did in college, my first semester.
You as a young person, did you ever consider yourself to be engaged? I don't want to say politics in the traditional sense of politics, but politically engaged or interested in activism. You mentioned before you're always community minded. How did that manifest as a young person?
Honestly, no. I mean, I wasn't really political. I wasn't even thinking about politics and how it affects my everyday life. It wasn't really until um, Obama came on the scene, because I was at that age, I was 18, I was able to vote. So for the first time, the first president I voted for was Obama.
Hmm.
And, that was the first time I actually like sort of paid attention to politics, even though I didn't understand a lot. And as far as like activism, no, this is all a learning experience for me and still fairly new because I walked out 3 years ago. Prior to that, I wasn't an organizer or a union organizer.
So, how does an aspiring music artist find themselves working in distribution logistics for a global Goliath in Staten Island?
Well, I mean that's easy. There's a lot of aspiring musicians at Amazon, to be honest with you, and especially it was more so during the pandemic. A lot of people went to Amazon as a secondary job, a fallback job when they lost their main job during the pandemic. So You'd be surprised. You'll probably come out with a whole band from working there, and, just talking to people. And um, yeah, for me, once again, I gave up my music career entirely when my ex-wife got pregnant with our twins. So I got married pretty young at like 22 years old. I had twins right off the bat, so from that point, it was like give up the music, because the music, as an independent artist, I couldn't sustain a family of five. Um, you know, and it just was, get back into, working full time. And that's what I did. I had multiple jobs. Amazon was one, but I actually had a second job on top of that one. And it's been that way ever since. I just continue to work instead of my music, and I had to give it up, unfortunately.
For those of us that are unaware, what exactly is it like to work at Amazon in the United States? Like, how do they recruit folks? What do they promise? But then also, what are the actual working conditions like?
Well, I used to tell my new hires, if you have a gym membership, you might want to cancel it. You're talking 10, 12 hours of calisthenics in a building that's 1 million square feet, the size of 14 NFL football fields. You're on your feet 10 to 12 hours, doing the same repetitive motion, and it takes a toll on your body. So, over time, if you're not preparing for yourself mentally and physically, the job will break you down. I've seen over my 5 years a number of good people come and go because they just couldn't take it. And, that's not including their commutes, which can be 2.5, 3 hours each way, for some workers, especially myself, who lived in New Jersey, who had to commute all the way to Staten Island, and then work a 12-hour shift. Our days are very long. And, that's the average Amazon worker. They don't come home and have, uh, you know, uh, they don't come home to basically have a time to enjoy and relax, family time, none of that. They really have to rinse and repeat and prepare for the next day. If not, work a second job, or also, on top of all of that, take care of their family, their kids, their loved ones, grandparents, etc. So it's a very strenuous and tough job to work at if you're, an average human being, which the working class, unfortunately, that's what we have to work.
Who are the types of people that you did work with at that particular facility in Staten Island? Were they young people? Did they come from different backgrounds? Like, who are the people that Amazon are trying to attract to work in their warehouses?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It was
Yeah, right.
all different ages, of course, majority of them be in their 20s. The Amazon targets a lot of college campuses, of course, more so for management though. But I seen them all. I had people that was in their 20s, some 18, 19, and I had senior citizens. Some people in their 80s working there. One of my workers, former workers, was in World War II. So they don't care. They'll hire you as long as you got two arms and two legs. They're there to make their profits. And as long as you can make some type of productivity for the company, they'll use and abuse you as long as they can.
Mm. Now, I read somewhere, I think it might have been an article in Time magazine, that you worked all the way up to assistant manager. So you're clearly
Yeah.
regarded by management as, I guess I'd say management material is probably the term they use, but your progress was blocked. Why do you think that was?
Well, it's the system that they have. It's not designed to give equal employment opportunity to people of color. Um, Upper management, 70% of Amazon's upper management is white. That's the way it's been for 29 years. Even if you look at their S team, that's the team with all the executive boards right under the CEO. They only have one black woman
Mm.
who's only been appointed in 2020 after I was fired. So it's not like they're giving a pathway for people of color. They never did. And the more you go up the food chain, the less diverse it is. And for these warehouses, it's the same demographics. Majority of the management is always white. and the black and brown are majority of the workers on the entry level. So for me, applying in a system that wasn't designed to promote me, it was just a dead end, and I had no idea until, once again, I'm no longer employed there.
So in March 2020, this all came to a head, where you walked out on the out of the facilities with a number of people. Just talk us through the circumstances that led to this moment of activism or action by you.
Well, yeah, it was a life or death situation during the pandemic, and after spending a whole week trying to reason and go through the proper channels with HR, and get some clarity on what they're going to do to protect us, the company disregarded that. Instead they told me not to tell anybody. That was one red flag, and then second red flag, which was really the last one, was when they only quarantined me and nobody else. Out of thousands of workers that attend JFK every day, to only quarantine me didn't make any sense, especially when I was trying to get everybody quarantined, basically. So breaking that quarantine to lead a walkout was the only option for me. Unfortunately, it led to my termination, but I was glad because I feel like I saved a lot of people's lives, which I have. And they still lost people that I've known, and the blood is on their hands still. And you know, um, that walkout really was the catalyst for this union pretty much taking place as well.
When you walked out, how many people came with you? And that feeling of walking out that door, I mean, what was going through your mind at that time?
Well, honestly, the numbers are still undetermined. We have no idea. I just know that the way we planned it, uh, it worked in our favor. We never really had a head count because we knew that it'd be impossible to get a head count with thousands of people in that building. We just knew that we organized to the best of our ability. That wasn't really that effective because we didn't know much. But
Hmm.
what we did, um, I used the media to my advantage. I knew that media is not allowed on private property. I knew they can only get a certain view. And I knew that that day in particular was a nice spring day. Most Amazon workers want to enjoy their lunch outside. And I knew if we timed it correctly, it would look like what people expected, a walkout. And that's exactly what we did. We staged the walkout around lunchtime, which made it seem like it may have been, hundreds of people walking out. And actually, it was a beneficial for us to do it that way because more people than expected, addressed the media and told their stories on what was happening at the time. So it just was the way we planned it that really helped us amplify the message.
That's super interesting. I love that tactic. I'm interested also. I think this may have happened, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but before you set up the Amazon Labor Union, you managed to
Oh
organize
yeah.
some pretty mighty voices to your
Hmm.
initial campaign, which included like the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who right now is taking on Donald Trump. Like, so, we're talking some big hitters here. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, all went on the record to pressure the company to reinstate you. How the hell did you swing that?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I didn't know the magnitude, especially when it was happening. I didn't know the magnitude of what I started with the walkout until once again now when I'm more educated on the labor movement and the political side of things. But at the moment, I'm just a regular, average person trying to just do the right thing, and I see all these things happening in the media. It was definitely surreal. And I just tried to once again harness all of that so that we can continue trying to advocate for workers' rights. So for me, when all of that stuff was breaking out in the news, that's when I really had to decide whether I'm going to continue speaking up or am I just going to take the legal route, which is, which what most people will actually do, which is take the legal route and then you'll never hear from them ever again. But me, I wanted to do things differently. Just going back to my childhood, that's just who I am. I always do things differently. And this was just no different. For me, stepping up to the plate was something that, I felt I had to do. with all the publicity that I was getting.
Look, that's an interesting fork in the road in that story there, because you're right. A lot of folks would normally take the legal route, but you chose to organize.
Exactly.
Why?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like the legal route, even though, there's you know, there's ways to get justice with the legal route and financial relief and all of that. I think what I was fighting for was bigger than that. And I still fighting for is bigger than, any type of individual relief I can get. So when I did do my lawsuit, I made sure it was on the behalf of the class. It was never an individual case. It was always a class action lawsuit. And I made sure that once again, I brought other people into this fight, other Amazon workers, other people who went through the same things during the pandemic and other industries as well. And I felt like who else would step up to the plate if it wasn't me? Like you mentioned, I was a supervisor for 4.5 years at Amazon, and still till this day, I'm the only supervisor who's been in that position at Amazon to speak out. Other people that speak out are entry level workers. They can get fired. They don't have that much tenure in the company. They didn't open up 3 facilities like I did. But for a supervisor in my position to speak out against this $1 trillion company, still to this day, I'm the only one that was able to, accomplish that with the platform that I was given.
Something that perhaps our Australian audience or a non-United States audience may not comprehend, but certainly the circumstances here in Australia is there is a union for pretty much every worker in Australia. Whether the union is present in a workplace or not, well, that will differ depending on what industry you're in. But if you want to join a union, there is a union that you can join. When you first walked out, and then obviously this campaign started to build momentum. I understand that it's maybe simultaneously while this was happening, that was it the RWDSU was running the campaign in Bessemer in Alabama.
Yeah.
What led you to setting up your own Amazon labor union as opposed to going down the path of engaging with a union that was already existing that was doing this kind of work?
Well, a number of things. I mean, for one, we drove down there. We saw their campaign in person, and I know a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon when they got in the media. They had politicians showing up for them, the Bernies and everybody else. So we got curious as well. We drove down there. We tried to connect with the union, and we learned that there was a huge disconnect with the workers there. The first campaign, and we knew their faith wasn't going to be good before we even left Alabama. We just didn't go public because we didn't want to create a divide in the workers and the solidarity that was being built. So after the results came out, we that's when we decided that we need to do something new and different. And quite frankly, when people do ask me this question, I'm like, Amazon's been around for 29 years now. If these established unions really wanted to organize it, it could have been done already. So what better way to do it than the way we did it with the workers who actually work for the company, where there's a relationship with the union because we are the union and we know our own grievances. We know our issues. We know what we want to fight for. We know the Amazon language, and we know our coworkers. We know them best. So we don't have to, once again, educate a third party on what Amazon is by itself and then re-educate everybody on what a union is, because that would have been another task that we had to take on. So it was kind of easier for us to skip that, initial step of organizing Amazon workers because we were them, and just go right into educating the workers and our coworkers on what a union is, and that's the way it was able to, ultimately be successful.
So what was the initial goal for this new union that you set up, the Amazon Labor Union? What was your goal that you're going to work towards initially?
Well, the same one. We have demands that they change all the time because Amazon changes their policies all the time. But it started off well, of course, with whole health and safety, we were talking about our campaign beginning when the pandemic was still here, and still very much alive, and especially in New York at the time. So for us, it was always health and safety and higher wages. We're not making enough money to sustain ourselves and work one job. Like I said, most of the Amazon workers, they'll get off of work and then they'll clock right into Uber or do a second job because one check is not enough. And you're talking about working for the richest man in the world doesn't make any sense. So wages, job security, health and safety, better health and medical leave benefits, pension, uh, college for yourself, your spouse, your children, all the things that regular unions provide, we're trying to provide the same thing. And right now we're fighting for our contract, which is the fight for 30. We're fighting for $30 an hour.
And so is the first step before you get to that negotiating table and start to negotiate with the company all of these things that you want, better wages, better conditions, that you need the Amazon labor union needed to be recognized as the union, and therefore you had to have a ballot of all of the workers that work at that particular facility. Is that right?
So yeah, the way it works in the States is the election that we had last year um, was for ballot recognition. And because we won the election and Amazon did object and appeal, the NLRB has dismissed all of their claims. So we are officially, as of January of this year, we are certified as a union by the federal government. Now we're waiting on a bargaining order, which a bargaining order, um, once the bargaining order is given to us, we as the union can order the company to come to the table. That hasn't happened yet. So because Amazon has appealed the bargaining order. So we're in this process where we're just waiting basically for the board to make their final decision. And once that comes down, then we'll be able to order the company to come to the table to negotiate our contract.
So going back to those embryonic days of when you set up the Amazon labor union, did you know how to organize? Were there folks around you that knew how to organize? Like in terms of trying to work towards this strategy, was it trial and error? Like, what resources did you have? What resources did you need to get? I know there's a whole bunch of questions there, but I'm just really interested about where you started. That's I find that fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, we started from nothing. We had literally a GoFundMe and a few people, and we learned as we go. We definitely didn't know all the answers, and we didn't have all the answers. We barely even had legal representation. We found one pro bono lawyer, and that was it. It was just really a handful of us and some resiliency and a lot of luck. Because once again, me as the leader had to navigate and play chess with the $1 trillion company, which I think I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at it because I knew the company. Once again, the difference between our campaigns and others is that me and everybody I organized with, we were invested with Amazon. We didn't just work there. We invested ourselves, our lives, our blood, sweat, and tears to this company for years. Everybody I worked with, they opened up JFK in 2018 when that building first opened. Um, Before that, I opened up two other buildings, 2015 in New Jersey, 2017 in Connecticut. I trained thousands of Amazon workers. So I knew the company better than the company knows the company. Jeff Bezos don't know what happens in his warehouses. I do. So that was the advantage that I still have over the company is this is a machine that's operated by people. But one thing Amazon doesn't know is people. They know machinery, they know robots, they know numbers, they know metrics, but they don't know people. So we'll always have that advantage. And me knowing that it was easy to organize people because once again, going back to my childhood, being an independent artist, being a musician, I always organize people. It's just in a different way. I had to organize my own shows. I had to organize my own events. And this was before social media was a thing. So I grew up in the 90s where we had face-to-face conversation, word of mouth, and community support to, bring people together.
I love it. And that was actually going to my next question. I was going to say, how significant was building relationships with those people that you worked with, but you were the trainer. And I've always found that some of the most powerful people in workplaces are the trainers because they get to meet everyone and they get to know everyone and they get to build relationships with everyone. And there's a trust there as well. I mean, how significant was that role, do you think, in being able to sort of build, I guess, the glue that bound that union or that the ability to forge a union together?
Oh, once again, I was the same way at Amazon. Who I am as an organizer. Amazon had me as a supervisor. I was a model employee, and I produced the best numbers they ever seen. I was one of their best employees in probably Amazon history. And I knew that. I knew my talent. I knew what I was capable to do. It doesn't matter what they given me or what they threw at me. I always prevailed. And when it came to bringing people together, yeah, I was a good listener. Even at Amazon, people loved to talk to me because I was a good listener. And that's the same way with organizing, building the relationships, earning trust. Me being outside the building, even though I was fired, I was outside of that building for over 300 days. So I spent 300 days, winter, cold, night, day, hot, cold, rain, shine. I was outside connecting with these workers, letting them know that I'm there for them, even though I'm no longer employed. And that right there resonated more than anything any union busting that Amazon could have ever done.
I want to come to that union busting in a moment, but what kind of tactics did you use, given that you were physically outside of the building, to continue to build that relationship with the workers that were inside working at the facility?
Oh yeah, it was breaking bread with them. I had a number of barbecues where I was giving out food every day, every other week. Um, bringing musicians to Staten Island to perform. We had like nice little mini concerts out there. We had a fire pit every night. Every night, cooking marshmallows, playing guitar, having candles lit, watching movies. We made it really a family oriented vibe, and everybody respected that. They enjoyed hanging out with us, even if it was for a few minutes. But we had people that hang out with us for hours. They'll come over there, they'll VTO from Amazon and come hang out with us all day long. And those moments right there, building that culture was unforgettable. Something that Amazon never dealt with before. We pretty much occupied Amazon's property for 11 months.
Let's take a quick break to talk about SwiftFox. Every moment on a campaign matters. You need the tools that you can trust. Lists that are up to date, absolutely. Phone banks that can change minds. Emails that drive donations, and events that will energize the community online and offline. And text blasts that distill your message perfectly. SwiftFox CRM is made for campaigners by campaigners. And to find out more, go to swiftfoxcrm.com to win your next campaign. Okay, let's get back to the show. Talk us, you mentioned before about the union busting tactics, and this is something that I think is starting to happen a little bit in Australia, but not to the level that we see in the United States in terms of the amount of money that companies spend on hiring consultants to sort of, I guess, bust unions. Talk about some of the tactics that the company deployed against you and the workers at this facility.
Yeah, they brought the cavalry on us like week 2. They brought union busters from all over, especially the ones that came from Alabama. They felt like they were the best weapons that they had. And they put our workers in over 3,300 captive audiences. They had the walls plastered with anti-union, propaganda. And they spent $14.2 million, on the union busters alone, just paying them, a blue cool amount of money to union bust. Pretty much, some of them were getting paid, $10,000 a day. Some of them were getting paid 24,000, 29,000 a week, 19,000 a week. We discovered all of this throughout our campaign, and it was just like roulette. They had union busters roulette. They was bringing them in, every week. Every week we were spotting new ones from all over different cultures. They tried to match up demographics. They were flying them in. left and right. And they were just, overly aggressive to the point where they arrested me. They arrested some of the Amazon workers that currently work there. And it just backfired on them. The true ugliness of Amazon was exposed for sure.
I was going to say, how significant sometimes can those tactics play into the advantage of the working people, and that sort of David and Goliath thing? People always want to back a David in this situation. Did that, were there ways in which you could take these tactics and turn it back to the workforce and say, hey, look, this isn't, is this the kind of company we want to work for?
Yeah, absolutely. Once one of our strongest tactics was exposing how much the union busters were getting paid, and exposing that to the workers, like letting them know, like, you got somebody in here who's a millionaire, literally a millionaire, trying to tell you, who makes less than 35,000 a year, to basically stay poor. Don't go up against your company because you are not making no money and you don't deserve to have any money. And once we expose all of that, that really is a snowball effect. Workers started to wake up like, hey, you're not even from New York. You're not from New York City. You're not from this area. You don't know what it is to live in our communities. You're not from the urban or Black and brown community, especially indigenous or immigrant. How the hell can someone like you tell us what's best for our rights and benefits? So when that started to click with workers, on top of Amazon just continuing to drill, union busting every day, every hour, workers started to see through it. They started to see and realize this company is spending all this money and time, instead of investing it to us and giving us bonuses and raises. They're spending more time worried about the AOU than anything they've ever seen before, and it doesn't make any sense. And that's what ultimately, was able to get people to vote for us. On top of the icing on the cake was when people saw me get arrested, because once again, I've been feeding these workers for 10 months straight at the time. And when they saw me get arrested, that upsetted people that even was on the fence, because they were saying to themselves, like, wow, this company will go that far to arrest people for just giving out free food. Doesn't make any sense. It's something that has to be done. And they voted yes.
That's brutal. Okay, so on April 2022, the workers at the warehouse voted in favor to unionize, voting 2,654 to 2,131. Describe the feeling in that count room. I'm assuming you were in that count room watching those ballots be counted, and then the feeling of seeing the result.
Well, yeah, I was in the room, during the count, and before we had to go downstairs and address the press and the crowd. Yeah, that moment was probably the greatest feeling in my life, next to my kid's birth. And I always say that because to share that moment with everybody I organized with, and to see all of our hard work paying off, and to see the reactions of the labor movement and beyond, that was just surreal. And to really, honestly, to rub it in Amazon's face was the best moment, especially to their lawyers, their $1 million lawyers that was in the same room as me, that had to sit there and watch, these thousands of votes be counted for 2 days straight. That was the best feeling, to shake their hand, with a smile on, and say, take that one to the bank, because, that was a priceless moment right there. So, yeah, I just, every time I think about it, it's like, I want to share that experience with everybody. I want everybody to feel that same exact feeling, when they organize.
It's fantastic. And obviously you went outside. Actually, no, what happened? Did the company communicate to the workers at the facility what the result was?
Yeah. I think they sent out a message saying that as soon as the results came out, they sent out a message talking about they're going to appeal. They wanted to make sure that that this wasn't like overwhelmingly felt in the warehouse, but it was already too late. The whole warehouse from the moment we won and we was on TV everywhere. From what we heard that day from the warehouse, the whole warehouse was ecstatic. Everybody was cheering, everybody was clapping, everybody was happy, and we heard that management wasn't really happy, and we knew that some jobs were going to be lost, which we were right. They cleaned house and cleaned out a lot of management that was there. Um, and I'm glad because they cleaned out the guy who fired me, which was once again another happy moment for me in my
Small
journey.
victory
So,
there. Love that. It's a personal victory. It's beautiful. At the
mhm.
time when you addressed the media and the crowd after the results, you said, and I quote, "I hope that everybody's paying attention now because a lot of people doubted us." Who are you speaking to when you said that?
Oh, it was pretty much everybody, including the media. The media was there, but the media doubted us. That's the funny thing. The New York Times, uh, their investigator journalist told us that every publication in America already had the headlines that we lost.
Hmm.
They had to change it. They had to change their headlines the second day, the day of, which they had to rewrite their whole stories because they already had stories written in titles and headlines as if we lost, but none for if we won because they didn't expect us to win. So I was talking to everybody, and they know exactly who they are: unions, politicians, celebrity lights, everybody in the movement, everybody that wasn't there now, they wasn't there when we began, and it's just unfortunate it had to be that way. But the next day, my phone didn't stop ringing, and it still doesn't stop ringing. So we know we did something.
Well, I mean, it certainly was felt out here in Australia as well. People certainly within the labour movement here in Australia took notice of what you
Oh
guys
yeah,
achieved. So it's
absolutely.
it's a worldwide thing, which is remarkable. You put Staten Island on the map, that's for sure. I'm interested to know just how did you and the workers keep faith throughout this, because it's been it was a long campaign. I know it's still going. I know there's still much more work to do, but certainly to get to this point, to do something that wasn't achieved in Bessemer, but you guys did. I mean, through all these challenges, how did you manage to keep focus on what you're trying to achieve? What were the things that you look at now and say, well, that sustained us?
Well, definitely strong leadership. Like you said before, I have to be the glue to keep everything going, and keeping everybody, my officers around me, level headed and focused on the mission. And that's that's the beauty of this union being worker led, is that the workers at the building, they control this union. It's only the way we're shaping out our union is natural, and we have a lot of growing pains, but it's great that we still have our representation and our identity. That's the most important thing that's protected, because this type of union is unique in its own way, but it's appealing to the mass, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to make unionizing look as appealing as we do. Uh, quite frankly, make it cooler, cool again. To talk about unions, to reach with the younger generation. My kids, I'm visiting middle schools now. My kids are 10 years old. They're watching me on YouTube. They're watching me on TikTok. Their teachers are talking about it. So to see that we're reaching generations in different spaces with our union, like you said, worldwide. I'm just trying to keep the glue. Keep it all together, keep us balanced, and keep us focused.
I mean, the name of the union, Amazon Labor Union, is the intention then to go and organize workers in other Amazon facilities, or is your focus just going to
Oh yeah.
remain on this one in Staten Island?
Oh no, we are already embarked on that one. We have about 4 campaigns active right now nationwide. One in Kentucky, the largest Amazon Air Hub network in the network, and then we have the Merino Valley ONT8. That's in the Inland Empire, California. That's a stronghold for warehouses over there. That'll be historical. Those campaigns already kicked off, and they've been collecting cards for months now. Any day now, they'll be filing for their elections. And I just came back from London, helping out, spreading the message over there with the carpentry workers, the UK. Hopefully, they'll be the first unionized facility. I know they're fighting for their recognition right now. Canada's organized, and we're trying to go international because we know it's not going to take one building or one country to bring Amazon to the table. It's going to take all of us.
That's huge. Just to your point before about, unions are starting to seem like they're cool again. I mean, certainly in the United States, including companies like Starbucks, Apple, we're seeing workers there organize as well. What do you think of the common threads that you're seeing across these different companies? Where is it just young people, or is it the conditions that they're in, or is it infectious that people had hope from what they saw in Staten Island to think, oh shit, we can do it here as well? What's going on, do you think?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of that. But the most important, the most recent thing is absolutely the pandemic that, paused everybody for a second to reevaluate their value as essential workers. When they called us essential workers and they didn't decipher who really is essential, who's not, they put everybody in the same position. And what you saw was, people say, you know what, enough is enough. If we can't get valued in the middle of a pandemic, then when the hell are we ever going to get valued?
Yeah.
And I just think that hasn't gone away. Even though they trying to distract us with the economy, getting everything running, all you hear is economy, economy, economy. Then all of a sudden it's a presidential candidates and election year and all this extra stuff. People are saying, you know what, the hell with all of that. We want to fight for our rights now. And the labor movement has a resurgence, especially after our historical victory last year. So, it's just something it's a slow revolution, but it is one. The problem is that the laws and the other intangibles are not up to date yet. The laws that are from the 1930s that are still in place, the laws that President Biden used to stop the railroad strikers in 1945. The fact that the NLRB is underfunded, $20 million and understaffed, can't keep up with the amount of cases that we even file against Amazon and Starbucks. These are all issues that hasn't been addressed in 60 years. So for us, we're fighting multiple battles at one time. And, if we don't do it, nothing's going to be given to us. So I just think that people are realizing that as well.
You had an opportunity, speaking of politics, you had an opportunity to meet with President Biden at the White House. When you tell us about that experience and when you got his attention, what did you say to him?
Well, like I tell everybody, I don't even remember that conversation because it wasn't the one that I wanted to have. And unfortunately, it just wasn't a visit that I can say helped our cause, because it hasn't. He hasn't done anything since then, and we're still waiting to have the PRO Act passed. So for him to call himself the most pro union president in American history, it's kind of tone deaf at this time. And it's ironic because I just got invited back to the White House to go in a few weeks, but I don't think I'm going to go. Well, actually,
did you really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is your second chance to say, "Hey, Joe, come on, seriously, what are you doing? Stop fucking us around."
I mean, it does, but at the same time, I know it's more so for him to get some votes for this election coming up, and they're not going to use me again. I got fooled once, but I go up there, and then the same day you give Amazon $10 billion. That just tells me where you align, and it only takes one time for me.
Yeah, exactly. Chris, look, we really appreciate you, man, coming on the show today. I know you got a packed schedule, and just listening to some of the things you want to plan to do next, it's huge. But we want to say to you from Australia, strength to your arm, to both you and all the workers in the Amazon Labor Union. It sounds
Thank you.
cliche because it's probably said so often in all the articles I've read about the campaign, about this whole David versus Goliath thing, but it really, really is. And as Marshall Gantz famously wrote, sometimes David wins. And in this case, you guys did. And you should be super proud of your achievements. And we want to ensure that you guys keep doing great work, not
Thank
just
you.
obviously in the United States, but across the world in helping organize Amazon workers. So well done. And thanks for your time today.
Absolutely appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Hey there. Thanks for listening to Socially Democratic. Did you like the podcast? Hit the follow or subscribe button and be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. And to get all the latest updates on Socially Democratic, follow Dunn Street on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we'll see you next Friday. Socially Democratic was brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. Maurice Blackburn Lawyers have spent more than a century paving the hard path to justice for everyday Australians. They've helped over 500,000 Australians turn their situation around, and they know how the system works. Their experience and skills means you'll get the best results possible. Find out more on their website, mauriceblackburn.com.au. Maurice Blackburn, experience you can count on. Socially Democratic was brought to you by SwiftFox. Every moment on a campaign matters. You need the tools that you can trust, lists that are up to date, phone banks that can change minds, emails that drive donations, events that will energize the community online and offline, and text blasts that distill your message perfectly. SwiftFox CRM is made for campaigners by campaigners. To find out more, go to swiftfoxcrm.com to win your next campaign.